Welcome, dearly beloved anointed ones. You never know who's praying for your downfall until they start slipping down yours. You better lean in, because what's unraveling right now is no ordinary fallout. It's divine payback in high definition. The same people who tried to bury your truth are now digging in all the wrong places, begging for help they'll never be able to afford. Not in prayer, not in therapy, not even with a GoFundMe. Here's a brutal fact. Psychological studies show that guilt and fear, when suppressed long enough, begin to mimic symptoms of actual illness. Chest pain, insomnia, even paranoia. And guess what? They've got all of them. Why? Because your name is now a ticking time bomb in their conscience. At first they thought they were getting away with it. You were too quiet, too calm, too unfazed. But what they didn't know was you were the evidence. You were the living receipt. You were the unsinkable one they bet against. And now that you're still rising, they're sweating like a vegan at a Texas BBQ. They didn't just F% KD up, they F% KD up in stereo. So loud and so bad that even the people there begging for help are like, wait, you messed with that one? Oh, you're finished. This isn't revenge, this isn't karma, this is revelation. And it's unraveling every lie they ever told about you. So get ready, chosen one, because your survival is now their biggest threat. And your truth? It's got them crying in places no one can see. Number one, they realized too late that you were the exception in a world built for duplicates. They realized too late that you were the exception in a world built for duplicates. They treated you like you were replaceable, like just another face in the crowd. At first, they mistook your uniqueness for weirdness, your depth for confusion, your humility for weakness. You didn't play by their rules, and instead of respecting that, they tried to flatten you into their mold. They thought if they ignored your gifts, belittled your light, and disrespected your boundaries, they could shrink you down to their size. But here's the catch. They didn't understand you were never made to fit in. You were designed to stand out. They tried to handle you like they handle everybody else, using the same tired manipulation, guilt trips, silent treatment, fake praise, and subtle sabotage. But what they failed to grasp is that you were never part of their pattern. You were the disruption. You were the glitch in their system. You didn't need their validation, and that terrified them. Because people like you don't show up often. And when you do, you don't stay long, but your impact lingers. Now they're spiraling, looking back at every move they made and realizing it was the wrong one. You were the rare one they were never supposed to mistreat. You were the opportunity dressed like a quiet person. You were the lifeline hidden behind humility. They had access to someone whose energy could have elevated their entire path, and they threw it away like it was nothing. Now they're panicking, not because you said anything, but because the truth is echoing so loud inside them they can't sleep. They're not just dealing with regret, they're dealing with the realization that they failed a once-in-a-lifetime connection. And the scariest part? There's no second chance with someone like you. They didn't just fumble a good person. They lost a soul that doesn't come around twice. Number two, you were their moral compass. Now they're lost in a maze of their own manipulations. You were their moral compass, and they didn't even realize it until you were gone. They thought they were leading you, correcting you, teaching you how to act right, but the whole time it was your presence keeping them in check. You didn't control them, you influenced them without trying. When you were around, they second-guessed their shady choices. They hesitated before lying, they paused before gossiping, they felt that sting of guilt before crossing the line. Not because you said anything, but because your energy silently reminded them of what integrity looked like. The moment you walked away, things started falling apart. Not all at once, but piece by piece. They began making decisions without that inner hesitation, without that quiet voice of truth you used to carry into every room. And now their life is filled with chaos they can't untangle. They're restless. Everything feels off, like they're stuck in some bad loop they can't explain. That's because the one person who once made them pause and reflect is no longer within reach. It wasn't about being perfect. You had your flaws, but your core was honest, real, solid. They underestimated the power of being close to someone who operates from a place of truth. And now that you're gone, their conscience is louder than ever, but there's no translator left to help them face it. They're trying to find another version of you in friends, lovers, spiritual guides, anyone, but no one fits. No one gives them that feeling of being safe enough to be honest or strong enough to be better. They thought they were doing you a favor by staying in your life. In reality, you were anchoring theirs. You didn't just walk away, you unplugged their access to clarity, and now they're lost in a maze they built themselves. They didn't just lose you. They lost the balance, the peace, and the self-awareness they only had when you were near. And the worst part is, they know they'll never find that in anyone else. Number 3, they used every weapon but never studied your armor. They used every weapon they had against you: gossip, lies, manipulation, silent treatment, fake support, but they never took the time to study your armor. They were so focused on attacking you that they never stopped to understand why none of it was working. They thought you were just lucky or clueless or too nice to clap back. The truth is, you were protected in ways they couldn't touch. You weren't built like them, you were built for this. They underestimated your endurance. They assumed you'd break the way others did. They thought their tactics would get under your skin, mess with your head, or force you into a reaction. But you weren't reacting. You were observing. You saw every move, every fake smile, every strategic silence. But instead of lashing out, you stayed still. And that drove them crazy. Because when they couldn't get a reaction out of you, they started questioning if they even had control in the first place. What really threw them off was how calm you stayed through it all. That silence wasn't weakness. It was your shield. While they were running around trying to create drama and confusion, you were conserving your energy. You were letting their schemes collapse under their own weight. And now they're exhausted, confused, and paranoid, wondering why everything they tried backfired. They had access to your presence, but not your strategy. They never understood how you processed things. They never figured out how deeply you think before you act, how much strength it takes to not respond to disrespect, and how dangerous you become when you're silent and aware. That's why they're worried now, because none of their tactics worked, and they know they've run out of ways to come at you. You weren't loud about your power, but you were covered in it. And now that their games have failed, they're left exposed, scrambling, and terrified, because they realize the person they tried to break has already won. Number 4, they wanted you broken because they knew the whole truth would break them. They saw early on what you didn't. Your integrity was the ticking time bomb they didn't know how to defuse. They underestimated the quiet power you carried. While they were busy living in half-truths, manipulations, and facades, you were the unmovable force of clarity they couldn't hide from. Your strength wasn't in fighting back. It was in the sheer presence of your authenticity. That was the one thing they couldn't control. That was the one thing that threatened to shatter their entire reality. From the moment they realized what you were capable of, they knew they couldn't let you live freely in your truth. They understood, perhaps better than you, that your integrity didn't just hold you together, it held a mirror up to them. Every time you walked into the room, your honesty forced them to face the lies they were so comfortably wrapped in. You were a constant reminder that they were not as untouchable as they thought. And for that reason, they had to destroy you. Not because you were weak, but because you were everything they were not: genuine, grounded, and unstoppable. Their attack wasn't personal, it was survival. If they didn't break you, the truth you carried would eventually crack them wide open. And so they tried everything. They lied, gaslighted, manipulated, and tore at your character with everything they had, thinking that eventually you'd bend or break under the pressure. But they failed to realize that your integrity wasn't fragile. It was the very thing that protected you from their assaults. It was armor, invisible to them but impenetrable to their poison. Then when they saw that they couldn't break you, you did the one thing they couldn't anticipate. You walked away. You didn't fight. You didn't scream. You didn't try to expose them. You let them destroy themselves with their own lies, their own guilt, and their own fear. You let the truth do the damage. And now they're left to deal with a fallout they can't undo, a collapse they brought on themselves, and the unbearable weight of knowing they failed to break you. But more than that, they failed to break the truth, and it's that truth that's unraveling everything they built. Number 5, they didn't fear your power, they feared what your presence exposed. They didn't fear your power because they couldn't see it at first. What terrified them wasn't your strength, but the way you made their falsehoods impossible to hide. You didn't need to confront them. You didn't need to point out their lies or call them out on their hypocrisy. You didn't even need to say a word. The mere fact that you existed, authentic, grounded, and unapologetically yourself, was enough to expose every crack in their carefully constructed persona. You were the mirror they could never fog up, never manipulate, never escape. They thought they had it all figured out, that they could wear whatever mask suited the moment. But when you walked into the room, their carefully crafted facades couldn't hold up. You didn't even need to look at them a certain way or speak harshly. Just being in their presence made them confront who they really were. Every time you stepped into their world, the illusions they had so carefully built around themselves began to crumble piece by piece. Your authenticity, your refusal to conform to their lies, was the silent weapon they couldn't shield themselves from. They tried to deflect, distract, manipulate, but the moment they came into your orbit, the truth about who they were was exposed for all to see. Your presence was a reminder of what they could never be, genuine, honest, unafraid of standing in the light of their truth. And it unsettled them. Because in the face of someone who was comfortable with themselves, someone who wasn't running from their flaws or pretending to be perfect, all their masks started to slip. Now that same mirror you held up to them, that reflection they could never escape, is the thing that haunts them. The truth of what they are and what they've done is always there, staring back at them in ways they can't ignore. They thought they could outsmart the world with their deception, but you weren't a part of their game. You were a force that exposed everything they hoped to bury, and now they're left with the bitter reality that they can't run from who they really are. Number 6, they thought you were weird because you didn't need their approval to exist. They couldn't understand you. Your presence was a riddle they couldn't solve. You didn't need their approval to exist, and that was the one thing they couldn't compute. In a world where validation is currency, where most people bend and contort themselves to fit in, you stood firm in your authenticity as if their applause was irrelevant. And that threw them off. They thought you were weird, off, or maybe out of touch because you weren't playing by their rules. You didn't shrink to make space for the crowd. You made space for yourself, unapologetically whole and unmoved by their judgment. Their world was built on applause and approval. Every move they made, every choice they made was calibrated for the praise, the recognition, the validation from others. They fed off the approval of the people around them, and when they looked at you, they saw someone who had no need for any of that. You weren't playing their game, and that was terrifying. How could someone survive without the constant boost of external validation? How could anyone walk through life without looking to the crowd for approval? That was their blueprint for existence. And you were the anomaly, the glitch they couldn't fix. They tried to poke at you, to make you feel small, to make you crave the same approval they did. But every attempt bounced off you like water off a duck's back. They couldn't break your peace because it wasn't dependent on them or anyone else. And that drove them crazy. They were conditioned to seek validation, to chase praise, to mold themselves into something the world would accept, but you didn't need any of that. You were enough on your own. That kind of freedom, it rattles people who are trapped in a cycle of seeking approval. Now they're restless. They're constantly chasing what they couldn't take from you, the peace of existing without needing validation. They don't know how to be whole on their own like you. That's why they can't rest. They'll never understand how you did it. And every time they see you unbothered and unshaken, they're reminded that their entire identity is fragile compared to yours. Number 7. They hated you quietly, but now they fear you loudly. At first, they hated you in silence, whispering behind your back and dismissing you as insignificant. They thought you were harmless, a mere blip in their carefully constructed world, too quiet and unnoticed to be a threat. But their whispers didn't stay hidden, and their dismissals didn't go unnoticed. What they didn't realize was that by underestimating you, they planted the seed of their own downfall. They thought you were a passing shadow, someone they could ignore without consequence. But now, every time they hear your name, see your face, or even catch a glimpse of your success, it sends ripples of fear through them. You're no longer the quiet figure they could ridicule in secret. You've become the loud force they can't escape. Now they're scrambling, looking for answers in all the wrong places. They've turned to psychics, fake spiritualists, and every New Age guru they can find, hoping for some sign that they can win back the power they once thought they had over you. They're watching your every move, scouring your social media for any clue that might offer them a sense of control or predict what you're going to do next. The quiet they once took for weakness has turned into an ocean of power they can no longer navigate. They're terrified of what you might be capable of. They're worried that the truth is still out there, lurking, ready to expose everything they tried to bury. The worst part? They can't understand how you've become the one they fear. They still can't process how you've grown stronger, more unshakable, more present in ways they never saw coming. And now that they realize just how wrong they were, it's too late. They're on the other side, desperately hoping for a glimpse of mercy, but they know deep down that they'll never get it from you. They don't fear your silence anymore. They fear the fact that you hold all the power, and they're left watching from the sidelines, completely powerless to change the game. Number 8, your existence was the evidence they tried to suppress. You never had to shout your worth, never had to wave a flag to prove you were strong, valuable, or capable. Your existence alone was the undeniable proof. You didn't need to convince anyone of your power. Your life was living evidence that truth, resilience, and light could survive even the harshest of storms. You didn't fit into the mold they tried to force you into, and for that they tried to bury you. They attempted to erase your name, smear your character, and diminish the impact you were making in silence. But what they didn't understand was that when you're the truth, no amount of dirt can keep you buried for long. You rose, not because you fought to be seen, but because your very essence couldn't stay hidden. Your story, your endurance, and your light had receipts, things they thought they could cover up, things they thought they could manipulate, but reality has a way of resurfacing. Your journey, your silence, your authenticity, they spoke louder than anything they could have done to stop you. Now your life has become the very testimony they feared. Every step you've taken, every moment of perseverance is a direct contradiction to everything they tried to say about you. They wanted to rewrite the narrative, to paint you as insignificant, as broken, as something to be discarded. But in doing so, they became the ones who sealed their own fate. You didn't need to fight them directly because your very existence was the weapon they couldn't defeat. Now they're the ones scrambling to hide their own truth, while yours has been resurrected, not as a claim or a battle cry, but as the ultimate proof of who you really are. And that more than anything exposes them for the frauds they've always been. Number 9, they called you delusional while secretly studying your brilliance. They called you delusional, a dreamer lost in fantasy, too out of touch with reality to be taken seriously. In public, they mocked your ideas, ridiculed your visions, and laughed at the things you said as if they were too outlandish to ever have merit. But what they didn't realize was that your brilliance wasn't meant for the time they were living in. It was meant to be a blueprint for the future. They couldn't see it then, but they were too small to understand the vastness of what you were trying to convey. Behind closed doors, though, it was a different story. When no one was watching, they were quietly studying your words. They couldn't stop quoting you, replaying the things you said, trying to decode what they'd dismissed as delusional not long ago. They found themselves suddenly drawn to the very wisdom they once mocked, trying to make sense of it, piece by piece, because somewhere deep down they knew you had something they didn't. You were speaking a language they didn't yet understand, a truth they couldn't accept until the world started shifting in ways that aligned with your predictions. And now, as the pieces of their world begin to crumble under the weight of their own ignorance, they find themselves mimicking your words, parroting your ideas, and pretending that they always knew what you were talking about. But what they fail to realize is that they're still trying to catch up. They're trying to wear your truth like a costume while you're already living it, walking it, and breathing it every day. The very ideas they mocked are now their survival guide, and they're scrambling to figure out how they can make them fit into their egos without admitting that they were wrong. It's too late for them to be the original voice, too late for them to claim your brilliance as their own. They'll never be able to stand in the same light you did because they're still trapped in the shadows of their own ego, trying to understand what they once dismissed. Number 10, they thought smearing your name would smudge your purpose. It didn't. They thought that by smearing your name, they could erase your purpose, dim your light, and cripple your path. They weaponized whispers, rumors, and lies, assuming that the more they spread, the more they could drown out the truth of who you were and what you stood for. They saw your strength as a threat, your clarity as a challenge to their control, so they thought if they could make enough noise, they'd silence you once and for all. But what they didn't realize is that the truth has a power that doesn't fade. It only comes back stronger. What they failed to understand is that when you're walking in your purpose, no amount of gossip, slander, or deception can touch you. They tried to make you the villain in a story where you were the hero, but their lies only set them on a collision course with their own downfall. The truth has a divine recoil, a force so powerful that every falsehood they told about you now bounces back to them. Every accusation they made, every rumor they spread, is now attached to their name, not yours. Now they're left grappling with the consequences of their own actions. What they tried to use to cancel you has become their undoing. The more they spread their lies, the more their own reputation starts to erode. Their attempts to destroy you only ended up revealing their true character to the world. The very thing they thought would break you is now breaking them. Every lie they told about you is now a reflection of their own dishonesty, and no matter how much they try to spin it, the truth is always louder. You're still standing, still moving forward, unscathed by their attacks. While they're consumed by their own lies, you're living proof that purpose isn't something that can be cancelled. It's something that can't be erased, not by whispers, not by rumors, not by anyone. And now, with every step you take, you're proving that nothing they did to you can touch the power of your truth. Number 11. They mistook your meekness for mental fragility. But you were just calculating the exit. They mistook your meekness for weakness, your quietness for submission, assuming that because you didn't react the way they expected, you were somehow mentally fragile, easily manipulated. What they didn't see, however, was that your silence wasn't a sign of defeat. It was the calm before the storm. You weren't folding under their pressure, you were calculating. You were observing, documenting, quietly taking note of everything that happened, every look, every word, every betrayal. You were absorbing the reality they thought you weren't paying attention to, but in truth, you were setting the stage for the inevitable exit they never saw coming. When you left, it wasn't a spontaneous decision, a rash reaction. It wasn't the result of one emotional outburst. No, it was surgical, it was precise. You had planned it all out in silence, taking your time to understand the dynamics, the power plays, the hidden motives. You knew exactly when to step away, when to sever ties, and when to remove yourself from the toxic environment they thought they had you trapped in. And when you walked away, they didn't understand what had just happened. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't impulsive. It was a well-calculated decision that left them reeling. And now, the vacuum you left in your absence is suffocating them. They can't fill the space you once occupied, not because they don't try, but because they can't replicate what you brought to the table. They thought they could discard you and move on, but your departure has created a void they weren't prepared for. Every piece of their carefully built world is starting to crumble because you were the glue holding it all together, whether they realized it or not. Now that you're gone, they're left with the weight of their own actions, struggling to maintain the balance they once had. The quiet observer they underestimated is now the catalyst for their unraveling. Number 12. They laughed at the storm you survived until their lives got hit with one they can't handle. They laughed at your storms, ridiculed you for the breakdowns you had, and used your vulnerability as fodder for gossip. They saw your pain as a weakness, an opportunity to make themselves feel superior, assuming that you were just another person who couldn't handle life's pressure. They overlooked your strength, failed to see the resilience behind your tears, and thought your moments of weakness meant your ultimate defeat. But what they didn't realize was that what they saw as your collapse was just the beginning of your rise. Your survival wasn't a sign of fragility. It was a testament to something far more powerful. Now life has turned on them. The very storm they once mocked is now the one they're fighting to survive. Their own lives are unraveling in ways they didn't expect, and they're being hit with a collapse they never saw coming. They thought they could sit back and watch you fall apart, but now they're the ones watching their worlds come apart at the seams. Every plan they built, every illusion they crafted is falling apart. And they're realizing that the strength they mocked in you wasn't just physical, it was supernatural. The way you endured, the way you kept pushing forward when everyone expected you to give up, wasn't just human. It was divinely inspired. The truth they ignored, the strength they underestimated, is now staring them in the face as they drown in their own crisis. Your survival wasn't about muscle or willpower. It was about something deeper, something they didn't understand. And now, as they struggle to piece together the wreckage of their own lives, they can't help but realize that what you went through wasn't just a test of endurance, it was a spiritual trial, one that left you stronger, wiser, and more prepared for anything life throws your way. Their laughter, their mockery, it all feels hollow now because they know deep down that you survived not by your own strength, but by the grace of something much greater. And that realization, it's too late for them to turn back. Number 13. They never imagined the same one they abused would become their unspoken karma. They never imagined the same person they abused, the one they thought they could break, would one day become their unspoken karma. They believed they could tear you down, use you as a scapegoat for their own insecurities, and watch you stay in the pit of their making. But what they failed to foresee was the divine force in you, the way your spirit would rise from the ashes of their cruelty. Now, your life has become a living indictment of everything they did to you. Every victory you experience, every door that opens in your favor is a reminder to them of the damage they caused and the inevitable consequences of their actions. They are now forced to watch, powerless, as you continue to ascend while they remain shackled to their own guilt and remorse. Each time you elevate, it's another courtroom where their wrongdoings are on full display, and you are the undeniable evidence of how their cruelty was never a reflection of you, but a reflection of their own flaws. You didn't need to confront them, didn't need to seek vengeance. Your very success, your ability to thrive, is all the justice they will ever need to witness. Every time you level up, every time your life shifts into something more extraordinary, they are reminded of the pain they caused and the karma that's been waiting for them. They can no longer ignore the truth that your freedom, your growth, is the very sentence they're forced to face. And as you rise, they remain stagnant, held down by the guilt of what they did to you, unable to escape the inevitable reckoning that your success has become for them. You are their unspoken karma, and with every step you take forward, they are reminded of the cost of trying to break someone who was always meant to soar. Number 14. You were the test, and they failed miserably. You were never just a bystander in their lives. You were the test, the measure of their character, the ultimate trial that revealed who they truly were. Your presence wasn't simply for your own growth, it was a challenge to them. A divine exam in how to treat someone with light, with integrity, with strength, and they failed miserably. They had a chance to rise with you, to honor you, to treat you with respect and kindness, but instead they let their egos and insecurities drive them to tear you down, to dismiss your worth, to underestimate your power. What they didn't realize was that this wasn't just a test for them in the moment. It was a test with long-lasting consequences. When they chose to treat you poorly, when they took advantage of your kindness or dismissed your authenticity, they sealed their own fate. The damage they caused wasn't just emotional or even relational. It rippled into the spiritual, financial, and generational realms. They thought they were dealing with a temporary setback, an easy target. But your light wasn't meant to be dimmed by their actions. It was meant to illuminate the darkness they were too blind to see. Now the consequences of their failure are becoming impossible to ignore. Spiritually, they're out of alignment, disconnected from the very energy that could have brought them peace and growth. Financially, they've felt the impact of their choices, whether through bad luck, poor decisions, or missed opportunities. But it's not just in this life. They've created a pattern, a chain of behavior that will affect their future, their families, and their descendants. The generational curses they've started will only continue to spiral until they face the reality of what they did and the reckoning that awaits. You were their test, and they failed. Now, it's not just you who rises, it's your legacy, your journey, your strength, and the ripple effects of your growth that will continue to echo long after they've realized the true cost of their actions. In the end, your journey has become far more than just a story of survival. It's a testament to resilience, strength, and the power of staying true to yourself. When the world tried to rewrite your narrative, they thought they could break you, diminish your light, and control your destiny. But instead, they unknowingly set the stage for your greatest evolution. They underestimated the depth of your purpose, the power of your spirit, and the force of your truth. And now they're left to witness the consequences of their own actions, a reality where your growth is the very reminder of their failures. The divine timing was always on your side. Every challenge, every trial, every painful moment was part of a bigger plan, one that has allowed you to rise above and beyond, stronger than ever. While they remain caught in the web of their own choices, you've stepped into your truth, unshaken and unstoppable, a force that can never be undone. Your life has become a blueprint for overcoming the darkest of days, a living proof that no matter how deep the storm, no matter how hard they try to tear you down, you will rise. Now, as you continue on your path, don't look back. Don't feel sorry for those who couldn't see your worth. Your freedom, your strength, and your success are all the evidence they will ever need. You don't need to convince anyone of who you are. Your life speaks louder than any words ever could. Keep soaring, keep shining, and remember this. The truth is undeniable and your purpose is unshakable. They thought they could take you down, but what they didn't realize is that they were only helping you become the person you were always meant to be. And now, your story is unfolding exactly as it was destined, powerful, unstoppable, and impossible to ignore. If you resonated with this message and felt the power in every word, make sure you're not just a passive listener. Be part of the movement. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on more content that speaks directly to your soul. Like, comment, and share this video with anyone who needs to hear the truth that's been hiding in plain sight. Don't keep this revelation to yourself. Spread the light, share the message, and let's keep rising together. Your support means everything, and together we're unstoppable. So go ahead, show some love, and let's continue this journey toward truth, power, and purpose.